Sometimes a single act of kindness can change a life. But in this story, it didn't just change a life, it changed two hearts. She saved a stranger's father, never knowing that the grateful billionaire son standing in front of her would one day fall deeply in love with her. Kindness is often treated as something small, an act that is appreciated in the moment but quickly forgotten by the world. Yet in truth, kindness is one of the most powerful forces a human can offer. It has the ability to change outcomes, redirect destinies, and echo far beyond the moment in which it is given. When she stopped to help a stranger's father on that street, she wasn't just performing a good deed. She was unknowingly altering the path of multiple lives. She didn't ask who he was, what he owned, or whether helping him would benefit her in return. She simply saw a human being in need and acted. And sometimes that pure, uncalculated kindness becomes the seed from which extraordinary stories grow. Kindness has power because it breaks through barriers that status, wealth, and privilege often build. Many people walked past the old man lying on the pavement, not because they were cruel, but because they were afraid, unsure, or convinced someone else would stop. But she didn't wait for someone else. In that moment, her willingness to act separated her from the world around her. She became the difference between life and loss for a family she didn't even know. In her mind, she was just doing what anyone should do, yet in reality, not many would. And that is the quiet power of kindness. It often goes unnoticed, yet it carries a strength capable of changing everything. Her kindness also held power because it was given without expectation. Too often, acts of help are tied to recognition or reward. But genuine kindness is different. It comes from a place within the heart that simply wants to do what is right, even when no one is watching. She wiped the sweat from the old man's forehead, stayed beside him as he fought for breath, and spoke reassuring words to calm him. She didn't know if he had a family. She didn't think about whether she would ever see him again. She didn't imagine her actions would reach the ears of a billionaire. And perhaps that is why the universe chose to weave such an unexpected outcome from her selflessness. Because true kindness, when offered freely, often becomes the most powerful of all. Furthermore, her act of kindness became a moment of proof that humanity still exists in a world that often seems too busy, too distracted, or too self-focused. When the billionaire's son learned what she had done, it wasn't just gratitude he felt. It was astonishment. For years, he had lived in a world where people treated him differently because of his wealth. He was used to people wanting something from him, valuing him for his status rather than his personhood. But she had helped his father without even knowing who he was. It was the first time in a long time he witnessed an act done purely out of goodness. Her kindness became a reminder that genuine hearts still walk the earth, a reminder he desperately needed. Kindness also creates ripples, effects that spread far beyond the initial moment. Because she helped that old man survive, she set off a chain reaction of events she could never have predicted. The son's gratitude turned into deep curiosity about the woman who had saved the most important person in his life. That curiosity turned into admiration, and admiration into something even deeper. But even before love entered the picture, her kindness had already created change. It strengthened the bond between father and son. It brought hope back into a life consumed by work, wealth, and pressure. It reminded an influential man of the value of compassion, inspiring him to use his resources to help others the way she helped his father. A single act, once small in appearance, now existed in every ripple it created. Most of all, her kindness held power because it revealed the truth about her character. It showed who she truly was, not the clothes she wore, not the background she came from, not the amount of money in her wallet, but the strength of her heart. And sometimes, character becomes the beginning of the most meaningful relationships in life. Her kindness became the foundation of trust, respect, and connection. It became a mirror reflecting her inner beauty, a beauty that no wealth could imitate and no status could overshadow. In saving a stranger's father, she didn't just save a life. She unknowingly opened a new chapter of her own story, one built not on wealth or luck, but on the simple, powerful truth that kindness can change everything. Courage is often mistaken for something grand, loud, heroic, or extraordinary. But the truth is, the most powerful forms of courage appear in quiet, ordinary moments when no one expects us to act. Her courage emerged not from physical strength or special training, but from pure instinct and a heart that refused to ignore someone in distress. When she saw the old man collapse, fear struck her like it did everyone else around. She didn't have medical expertise. She didn't know if she could help, yet she pushed past her uncertainty. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It is the decision to move forward despite it. And that decision, made within seconds, became the turning point of an entire story. Courage comes from the heart because it is rooted in empathy, not ego. Most people that day hesitated because they didn't know what to do. They feared doing something wrong, getting involved, or making a mistake. But she feared something far greater, the idea of leaving someone helpless. That emotional instinct to protect, to support, and to care is what pushed her forward. She knelt beside the stranger with trembling hands, but steady intentions. And though she was scared, her compassion overpowered her fear. That is the kind of courage that ordinary people display every day without fame, without applause, and without ever realizing how extraordinary it truly is. Her courage also shines in the fact that she took responsibility in a chaotic moment. When a crisis hits, it's human nature to look around and expect someone else to step in, someone older, someone stronger, someone more prepared. But when she saw no one else moving, she became that person. She called the ambulance, checked his pulse, and tried to keep him conscious, all while trying to control her own panic. Even as bystanders watched in silence, she became the leader they needed in that moment. Courage does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers, "If no one else will, then I will." And that whisper can save a life. What made her courage even more remarkable was that it came with no guarantee of success. She didn't know if her actions would help. She didn't know if the ambulance would arrive on time. She didn't know if the man would survive. But she acted anyway, because courage is not measured by outcomes, it is measured by intention. She did everything she could with the little knowledge she had, powered entirely by her will to help. That willingness to try, even in uncertainty, is a quality far rarer than strength or skill. It's easy to be brave when you know what to do, but true courage is stepping forward when you don't. Her courage also reflects a deeper truth about heroes. They are often the people who don't see themselves as heroes at all. When the billionaire's son later found her and thanked her for saving his father, she didn't feel deserving of praise. In her eyes, she had done what anyone should have done. That humility is part of what made her actions so powerful. Real courage isn't performed for recognition. It isn't done to look brave. It is simply the refusal to turn away when someone needs help. And because her courage was pure and instinctive, it left a far stronger impression on those who witnessed or heard about it. Most importantly, her courage revealed who she truly was at her core. It showed that she possessed a strength that could not be bought, taught, or inherited. Her bravery came from her character, from a heart capable of empathy, an instinct that prioritized others, and a spirit that refused to let fear win. This inner strength would become one of the reasons the billionaire's son saw her differently from anyone else he had ever met. In a world where many admire wealth or beauty, he admired something far deeper, a courage that came not from confidence, but from compassion. And while she never realized it, that single courageous act became the beginning of a connection that would forever change both their lives. Humanity is one of the rare qualities that shines brightest when status, wealth, or social labels are completely stripped away. In the moment she saw the older man collapse, she didn't see a wealthy businessman, the father of a billionaire, or an influential figure. She saw a human being in danger. Her instinctive reaction came from a place of equality, a deep-rooted belief that every life is valuable, regardless of who it belongs to. This is what makes her action so profoundly meaningful. She didn't calculate worth based on appearance or assume responsibility based on someone's social position. She responded to a human need, and in doing so, proved that genuine compassion recognizes no hierarchy. In a society where people often judge others by their clothes, their cars, or the circles they move in, her reaction was refreshingly pure. Many people unthinkingly measure someone's importance by outward signals, luxury brands, expensive jewelry, or the aura of influence. But she didn't pause to consider any of these things. If anything, the older man appeared like someone with no resources at all. His clothes were simple, his face was tired, and his collapsed form made him seem fragile and ordinary. Yet none of that changed the urgency she felt. In her mind, the most important fact was simple. This was a life in need, and that is how humanity should operate, not by judging who deserves help, but by offering help because it is right. Her refusal to judge or categorize the stranger also highlighted the difference between social labels and personal values. People often claim to be kind, but their kindness is conditional, offered only when it benefits them, impresses others, or aligns with social expectations. Her kindness, however, was unconditional. She knelt beside the stranger without expecting appreciation, without knowing his social standing, and without trying to create a good impression. Her actions were a reflection of who she truly was, a person who believed that every individual deserves care and dignity. And long before the billionaire son ever met her, her values had already set her apart from the world he knew. It is interesting how life works, for the man she saved was someone who had been surrounded by status all his life. He had lived in luxury, worked with high-profile corporations, and moved in powerful social circles. Yet the moment he collapsed on the street, none of that mattered. His money could not prevent a heart attack, his influence could not stop his fall, and his network could not immediately come to his rescue. In that vulnerable moment, he was just a man fighting to live, and the only person who saw him that way, the way it truly mattered, was her. She didn't see power, she saw humanity. And that difference became the thread that quietly tied their worlds together. When the billionaire son learned what had happened, he was struck not just by her bravery, but by her purity. He had spent years surrounded by people who approached him for his wealth, his position, or connections. Authenticity was rare, and sincerity even rarer. Yet here was a woman who had saved his father without knowing anything about their status. She didn't hesitate because she thought the man was important. She hesitated because he was human. That realization touched him deeply, more than any gratitude he had ever felt before. For the first time, someone interacted with his family without being influenced by their name or reputation. The humanity in her action awakened something in him: respect, admiration, and a desire to understand the kind of heart that could care so freely. Most importantly, her actions revealed a universal truth, that real worth lies not in wealth or position, but in the way we treat others. She reminded everyone who heard the story that status is temporary, titles can vanish, and material possessions can change overnight. But humanity, real, genuine humanity, leaves a lasting imprint. Her decision to help a stranger reinforced the idea that compassion is the true equalizer. When she saved that older man, she wasn't saving a billionaire's father, she was saving a life. And perhaps that is why her story became so powerful, because it showed that when we look past status, we discover the shared human bond that connects us all. Life has a remarkable way of creating connections in moments we least anticipate. Sometimes, the most meaningful relationships start not with introductions or careful planning, but with accidents, coincidences, and unexpected twists. When she rushed to help the older man on the street, she never imagined her actions would become the bridge between two completely different worlds. She didn't know that this spontaneous act of compassion would intertwine her life with someone she had never met, someone whose lifestyle seemed galaxies away from her own. Yet that is how life works. quietly, subtly, stitching together paths that were never supposed to cross, yet somehow were always meant to meet. The beauty of unexpected connections lies in their sincerity. Unlike relationships formed through social circles, networking, or shared status, unexpected connections happen naturally, without pressure or motive. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She wasn't looking for attention or praise. Her only intention was to help, and because her action was so genuine, the connection that followed was built on honesty rather than pretense. That authenticity became the foundation for something meaningful, something far deeper than anything either of them could have consciously created. What started as a moment on a busy street slowly became the beginning of a story neither of them knew they needed. Such unique connections have a way of challenging the boundaries society creates. On one side of this story is a billionaire, someone raised in privilege, surrounded by luxury, and accustomed to a life filled with expectations. On the other is a humble, ordinary young woman whose world is shaped by simplicity and real life struggles. In any other situation, the two of them might have passed each other without a second glance. They lived in different social realities, guided by different routines, and surrounded by different people. Yet fate chose an unusual doorway to bring them together, a crisis, a moment of kindness, and a shared human experience. Sometimes, the universe uses unexpected circumstances to dismantle the walls that separate people, revealing that hearts speak a language far more powerful than status. The son's first encounter with her wasn't romantic or dramatic. It was emotional. Seeing the woman who had saved his father didn't just evoke gratitude. It created a connection rooted in something pure. He saw in her a warmth and sincerity that he rarely encountered in his privileged world. His life had often taught him to be cautious, to question motives, to guard himself against people who valued him for his wealth rather than his humanity. But when he stood before her, he felt none of that suspicion. Instead, he felt clarity, a recognition that here was someone genuine, someone whose intentions were untouched by selfishness or expectation. That unexpected sense of trust was the first thread in a bond that neither of them had seen coming. On her side, the connection was just as surprising. She had never imagined that her simple act of helping a stranger would bring someone like him into her life. She didn't act to be noticed, yet she was noticed anyway. Not for her appearance, not for her background, but for the goodness of her character. When he approached her, gratitude in his eyes, she felt a strange mix of astonishment and humility. She was used to living unseen, blending into the ordinary rhythm of everyday life. But suddenly, someone who lived in a world of influence and spotlight was looking at her as though she mattered deeply. That moment challenged everything she believed about herself, reminding her that small acts could create impacts far greater than she ever imagined. Most importantly, their unexpected connection became proof of how unpredictable and beautifully messy life can be. We often try to plan our futures, imagining who we will meet or what path we will follow. But the most important people in our lives rarely arrive according to plan. They appear in unexpected moments, through challenges, accidents, coincidences, or acts of kindness that seem insignificant at first. Her simple decision to help a stranger became the beginning of an extraordinary connection, one that would reshape both their lives in ways neither of them could have predicted. And perhaps that is the true magic of unexpected connections. They remind us that behind every ordinary moment lies the possibility of something extraordinary taking root. Gratitude is one of the most powerful emotions a human being can feel, because it transforms not just the person who receives kindness, but also the one who expresses appreciation. When the billionaire's son learned that a young woman had saved his father's life, his gratitude was immediate, profound, and overwhelming. He wasn't simply thankful for a good deed. He was grateful for the protection of the most important person in his world. But what made his gratitude especially meaningful was that it wasn't rooted in obligation or formality. It came from a deeply personal place. In that moment, the woman who had saved his father was not just a stranger. She had become part of his emotional story, someone whose actions touched him in a way few ever had. His gratitude became the first step toward building a connection between them. When he sought her out to thank her, it wasn't because he wanted to repay a debt or fulfill a duty. He wanted to look into the eyes of the person who had shown such selfless courage. He wanted to understand the heart behind the action. Most people who approached him wanted something from him: partnerships, favors, opportunities, or recognition. But she had asked for nothing. That purity of intention moved him deeply. His gratitude wasn't just for the life she saved. It was for the goodness she embodied. And so his thank you carried a sincerity he hadn't felt in a long time. Gratitude has the ability to build bonds because it opens doors to vulnerability. When he stood in front of her, expressing his appreciation, he wasn't the polished, confident man the world knew. He was simply a son who nearly lost his father. Gratitude stripped away his layers of wealth, status, and expectations, revealing someone honest and human beneath it all. And she saw that vulnerability. She realized that behind the billionaire title was a man with fears, emotions, and a deep love for his family. That honesty formed the foundation of a bond grounded not in power or advantage, but in shared humanity. Sometimes, gratitude reveals more about who a person is than their achievements ever could. On her side, his gratitude made her feel seen in a way she wasn't used to. She had acted instinctively, believing anyone in her place would have done the same. She didn't think her help was extraordinary, yet for him it meant everything. Hearing the depth of his appreciation touched her heart because it reminded her that even small acts could have profound impact. She wasn't used to being recognized or celebrated. Life had taught her to blend quietly into the background. But now, someone stood before her, acknowledging her courage with genuine emotion. That recognition didn't inflate her ego. It awakened a sense of worth she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. Gratitude also deepened their bond because it created a bridge of mutual respect. He didn't see her as someone beneath him socially. He saw her as someone above him morally. The more he learned about what she had done, the more he admired the purity of her intentions and the strength of her character. And she respected him for the sincerity with which he expressed his thanks. Many wealthy individuals offer gratitude through expensive gifts, grand gestures, or public announcements. But he didn't want to overwhelm her or turn his gratitude into a display. He wanted to honor her kindness with humility, authenticity, and emotional honesty. That respect became the root of trust, a crucial foundation for any meaningful connection. Most importantly, gratitude created a bond between them because it transformed a single moment into a shared chapter. Saving his father had already connected their lives, but gratitude made that connection emotional. It turned a one-time incident into a relationship, however undefined at first. Gratitude gave them a reason to talk, to meet again, to stay in each other's thoughts. It slowly shifted from "thank you for saving my father" to "I want to understand who you are." And without forcing anything, without rushing anything, that gratitude grew into admiration. And admiration, as it often does, became the quiet beginning of something deeper. In this way, gratitude wasn't just a reaction. It became the bridge that allowed two very different worlds to step toward each other. Love is one of the most unpredictable forces in life, soft yet powerful, quiet yet life-changing. It rarely follows logic, social rules, or the expectations we set for ourselves. In their story, love didn't arrive with grand gestures or dramatic moments. It began in silence, in the spaces between gratitude, admiration, curiosity, and respect. Neither of them planned it. Neither of them imagined it. They came from different realities, one built on simplicity, the other on wealth and influence. And yet, despite all that separated them, love slowly began to weave its way through their lives, guided not by intention, but by destiny. It is in this unexpected unfolding that the true beauty of their connection lies. Love finds its own path because it is drawn not to appearances, status, or worldly possessions, but to the essence of who a person truly is. He had met countless people, some charming, some ambitious, some impressive, but none had moved him the way she did. It wasn't her looks, though she was beautiful in her own quiet way. It wasn't her background, because she had none of the wealth he was surrounded by. It was her heart, her courage, her sincerity, her kindness. These were qualities he had long forgotten existed in their purest form. And as he spent more time with her, he realized that she was someone he didn't need to guard himself against. With her, he could be genuine, vulnerable, human, and that feeling became the beginning of something deeper than admiration. On her side, love crept in softly, disguised as connection. She didn't allow herself to even consider the possibility at first. After all, what place could she possibly have in his world? He was everything she wasn't. Powerful, wealthy, influential. She had no desire to be impressed by luxury or titles. Yet the more she saw him, the more she discovered the person behind the reputation. A man who laughed genuinely, cared deeply, and struggled silently. A man who didn't treat her as someone unworthy or beneath him, but valued her thoughts, her words, and her presence. That gentle consistency, that kindness he showed her, made her heart soften in ways she could not control. She didn't fall for the billionaire. She fell for the person beneath the name. As love slowly developed between them, it also challenged the expectations and fears they both carried. He worried that approaching her might seem like an intrusion, or that she would think he was using his power to influence her. She worried that accepting his attention might drag her into a world she wasn't prepared for, a world where she didn't belong. But love, in its quiet persistence, reassured them both. It showed him that sincerity can bridge even the widest gaps. It showed her that genuine feelings can exist even in places where she least expected them. Love didn't ask them to be perfect or fearless. It simply asked them to be honest, with themselves and with each other. What made their love even more powerful was how naturally it grew. There were no forced conversations or exaggerated gestures. Instead, there were simple moments, sharing stories, walking together, laughing at small things, comforting each other in unspoken ways. These moments became threads, and over time those threads formed a bond strong enough to withstand the differences between their worlds. He learned to appreciate the simplicity of her life, the groundedness she brought into his world of constant pressure. She learned to understand the weight he carried, the loneliness hidden behind his success. In each other, they found what they hadn't even known they were missing. Most importantly, their story shows that love finds its own path when two hearts are aligned in values, not possessions. Love doesn't care about wealth, status, background, or circumstances. It doesn't follow rules. It doesn't wait for the perfect moment. It arrives quietly, often in the aftermath of something unexpected, and slowly reveals its presence when we are ready to embrace it. And though she never imagined that saving a stranger's father would lead her to someone who would one day hold her heart, that is exactly what happened. Because love, real, deep, transformative love, has a way of appearing in the most surprising places, shaping lives not through intention, but through destiny's gentle, unplanned touch. In the end, their story was never about wealth, status, or the worlds they came from. It was about the choices that define us, the courage to act, the kindness to care, the humanity to see beyond appearances, and the gratitude that binds hearts together. What began as a simple moment on a crowded street became the thread that tied two destinies into one. She had saved a life without expecting anything in return, yet life returned to her something far greater than she could have imagined. And as they stood side by side, no longer strangers but two souls connected by fate, they realized that some stories aren't planned. They are found, discovered, and woven by moments that choose us. Because sometimes, all it takes is a single act of goodness to change a life. And sometimes, that life changes yours right back.